Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
I spent some of the best years of my life in Nicaragua during the original revolutionary government of the Sandinistas.
After the overthrow of the Somoza dictatorship, the FSLN set about transforming the impoverished Central American country in ways which made it beloved of all progressive people throughout the world.
The US government of Ronald Reagan, and with George Bush Sr., John Negroponte, Colonel Oliver North, and a cast of right-wing crazies, set about a terrorist campaign against Nicaragua, similar to the one in Syria today. The World Court condemned the US for terrorist acts, but that didn't stop them.
Eventually, the Sandinista government was brought down and most of what they achieved destroyed. It was business as usual.
That seemed to be the end of that. But from the ashes of defeat, the Sandinista leader, Daniel Ortega, rose again. And he celebrates 10 years in power since being re-elected on November 5th, an auspicious date, 2006. To mark the occasion, we are delighted to welcome Nicaraguan ambassador to Britain, Her Excellency Guisell Morales-Echaverry. Your Excellency, thanks for joining us and congratulations on the 10th anniversary. What are the main differences between the Sandinistas when I knew them and loved them and the Sandinistas in power now today?
Thank you, George, for inviting us and be part of this celebration. Wow. And to your answer, I will say there is no difference. Okay. Do you know why? Because most of the people that fought for the Sandinista, was part of the Sandinista first time of the revolution, is still there. The revolution hasn't stopped. We just wasn't waiting for 15 years, but the revolution continued, and the revolution is still there now.
So it's not like Labour and New Labour. It's not new Sandinista with a different approach altogether.
Not at all. It's the same Sandinista. We have the same principles. We still believe in the Sandino ideals, and we still believe that people is first. So that is the main thing of what happened in the first time of the Sandinista. People was the first important thing in the revolution, and it's happening now too.
And what about the enmity of the United States? I was there when the Contra, funded and armed by the United States, were literally cutting people's throats and leaving their tongues like neckties. Teachers were targeted. Health workers were targeted, literacy workers were targeted. The United States did everything it could to destroy the great achievements of President Ortega's first term in power. Has the US gone a little bit soft on the Nicaraguan process?
I think they have been realistic. They have been realistic in terms of that this government, this new Sandinista government, has the back of the people. The people is backing. So there is different internationally. In the region has much happened in terms of governments, left-wing governments and socialist government who has come to power. Latin America is not the same Latin America than the 80s. So they are being practical, and we have been working with America in many areas. They still are the first, our first buyers, our first investors, and I think but not, we have not to be, let's say, clouded by this good, we'll say, good relations. But because lately we have it has been approved by the Congress, a NICA Act, which is about to ask the government, the U.S. government, to stop the funding from international financial organizations, loans to Nicaragua, if they believe the elections now are not
to their
fair,
liking.
Not
of
fair.
their liking, of their liking.
Yeah.
That's the best word. They are not stopping. They are just moving in different forms.
And of course, as you say, it's not the Latin America of the 1980s, but it may be heading back that way. There have been many setbacks for the left in Latin America just in the last couple of years.
Yes, indeed. We have different movements. We have, they don't use anymore the coups, military coups, but now they use the national assemblies to do the coup. And we have to be realistic that we live in a different moment. And the people has the power to change, for changes. So if the people believe this is the way we should go, I think the left has been, in Latin America, has been respecting that decision. And we need to work in a different way and find our ways back to the people, so the people keep electing governments that will fight and will put them first.
There are not many figures like President Ortega, whom I knew in the 1980s, who are still strong and determined in 2016. What's the secret of his longevity, so I can have a drink of it or eat it?
I think that his good health is because he do a lot of exercise. He believes he runs every day of his life. He runs every morning.
Don't tell
Every day.
Don't tell
Every
my
day.
I think he also has a wife who is very much into the good food.
Well, I want to ask you about the wife, because obviously we present the show together, we work together as husband and wife, and he and his wife, the president's wife, has been with him with the revolution from the beginning. They've been working together from the beginning. Could you tell us more about her?
Well, it was even before the revolution when Rosario Murillo has been member of the supported and guerrilla fighter since the early 70s. So she has been in the Sandinista party, in the Sandinista movement long ago. And she made her names not because of the wife of Daniel, but because her own merits.
The achievements in the field of women's rights for Nicaragua have always been part of your main attraction and appeal to people. I saw some figures from you showing that you're actually, on the world level, you are
Ahead
on some of these achievements, the gender gap figures. Tell us about those.
Well, as you mentioned, since the beginning, women, even before, women were leading the Sandinista fight in the guerrillas' time. And after that, we have ministers leading health, for example, international affairs. We had ministers in all of that. And in this time, in this new government, Sandinista government, that's one of the things that we wanted to keep working on. And to close the gender gap that was created during 17 years of neoliberalism. So what we did is in 2009 there was a law that goes 50-50. And it was a law of equity, to close that gender gap. And so from that law on, every government body should have, if the minister is a woman, the man is the vice minister or the deputy, and the same. So we are equal on that.
Wow.
In all position of direction, there is always a woman and co-working together. And in the elections, all the parties who goes to participate in an election. They need to have candidates, half has to be woman, half has to be men.
That's a remarkable thing.
Unbelievable.
And so that has taken us from being number 12, I think, in 2014 to number 10 now in gender gap in the world, in the overall measure of gender gap index. But the most striking is the political attainment, which is we are number 4 in the world. And we have closed the gender gap in education and health. And that is a reflection of what the government has been doing in those social areas.
Let me get this right. You are number 4 in the whole world for women's empowerment.
Political empowerment.
Political empowerment. Yes. I don't want to embarrass you, but where does Britain come in this table?
Well, I'm not the one who will be embarrassing. It's the gender gap index, and it's 24th.
So Britain is 24, despite having a woman head of state and a woman prime minister, and you are number 4. This is a remarkable achievement. Congratulations also on that. We don't have much more time, but how much more time do you think Daniel will put in as president? Is there any talk of retirement, or is he going on?
Well, he has to finish, if he is elected, he has to finish his mandate, of course. And then we need, the Sandinista party needs to decide that. We have a council in the Sandinista party members are elected to become part of it. So it's a very democratic process that goes on internally in the party. So he will be really, if the Sandinistas membership believes he needs to go on and he has the health and he has has done the good job we believe we all be working on.
I hope he keeps on running myself. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us on board the Sputnik.
Thank you to you.
Coming up next, the political cartoonist pen, sharper than any sword. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to Sputnik. As you already know, I'm a firm believer that if the pen is mightier than the sword, then the cartoonist pen is the sharpest of the lot.
Dr. Timothy Benson is one of the sharpest tools in that particular box. He is Britain's leading authority on political cartoons and has just released his book, Britain's Best Political Cartoons.
And he has his own cartoon gallery in Putney in London, which should be on every London visitor's list of boxes to tick. Dr. Benson joins us now. Congratulations on the book. Is this the 4th?
This is the 4th one in the series.
It is a remarkable piece of work. I've got the previous 3. I'm hoping you're going to leave me that one, a signed copy of that one. It is undoubtedly true that if you can get people laughing at your political opponents, it's much more effective than merely throwing brickbats at them. And indeed, we were discussing, there's that famous quote from the spitting image people, that if a politician ever asks for his dummy, then he's failed. What's the historical impact of cartoons in your view? How long has this been going on? And is it a very British thing?
How long have you got? I mean, England has an unrivaled heritage in cartoons. We don't lead the world in much these days, but when it comes to political cartoons, we've always had the best cartoonists. And interesting what you said about making fun of politicians. If you look at the great David Lowe, who's the father, the daddy of them all, he's famous for ridiculing Hitler and Mussolini in the 1930s and 40s. And he created Colonel Blimp and the TUC cart horse. And he said about Hitler and other dictators, they want to be portrayed as monsters. They want people to fear them. But if you portray them as fools, they hate it. And in fact, Hitler tried to censor Lowe's material. He put pressure on the Foreign Office to get him to tone down his work.
That was an early example. Of course, David Cameron and Tony Blair. Perhaps Blair in particular, and perhaps Steve Bell in particular. He's my favourite, I must tell you. I'm a great admirer, and he features a lot in our new film on Blair. How he drew Blair over the years, metamorphosing into Thatcher with the one staring eye is pure genius, in my opinion. Do you think Blair was particularly well caricatured?
I think it was difficult. It's difficult to get young politicians to caricature them properly, especially, now we have women politicians, but luckily they're much older. When they're young, they're not craggy. Their noses haven't grown. They haven't got the creases and the lines, and so it takes time. And also, they don't have the tags of identity.
No.
Churchill had the cigar. They played up to the cartoonists. Yeah. And the thing with Blair, I always thought it was sort of cartoons and such things were beneath him, and that he wasn't bothered them. But I bumped into Nick Brown a couple of years ago, and he told me that Blair was incredibly vain and hated being portrayed, especially with a receding hairline. That really got to him.
That really got to him, huh?
Yeah, and John Major, of course, was another one.
Well, John Major was brutally caricatured, again, especially by Steve Bell, as effectively a man who tucked his shirt into his underpants, which were in any case a very unflattering, baggy, grey pair of Y-fronts. And in the end, John Major was his underpants.
Yes, indeed. In fact, Major said, when somebody mentioned the cartoons to him about being depicted that way, he said, these things are done to destabilise me.
So I was discussing with my friends, my Dutch friends recently, how iconic British humour really is. It has this particular, you can't describe it, and it's just, I grew up with it, I loved it, and yesterday we were watching Only Fools and Horses again, and instantly you get that British humour, and you think that's the same in a cartoon world. I
mean, probably 2/3 of this book wouldn't be published in any other country, because British cartoonists have far more freedom here to be as crude as they like. I mean, it's very much an unfair art form. It's a very reactionary art form, because if it was the opposite, if it promoted the politicians, it would then end up as propaganda.
Yeah, but you used a word earlier, destabilizing. This makes the point I made in my introduction, that this is much more damaging to a politician than mere criticism, because it is making people laugh at them.
Mrs. Thatcher didn't have a sense of humour.
No.
So it didn't bother her.
Well, I sat in Parliament, as you know, for almost 30 years, and I can tell you that when the House was laughing at someone, it was infinitely more destabilising than if the House was shouting angrily at someone. I've seen it with my own eyes.
I mean, it's all about perception, isn't it? If you damage the perception, it's like Ed Miliband and Neil Kinnock. Once you make them look un-prime ministerial, so to speak, that's very damaging, because people... I've got a quote in the book, because I've been looking at American elections and British cartoonists, and I've got a quote from a cartoonist who says that David Cameron is the type of guy you will get to play a prime minister in a movie, and it is very much about perception. And Ed was never appeared prime ministerial, therefore why lots of people didn't vote for him.
Let's take a look at some of your, take a look at some of the stuff from the book. This, of course, a pastiche on the Saddam statue being pulled down. There's Blair, unmistakable, being pulled down by Chilcot. Not quite true, as it turned out, because Chilcot's 2 million words were largely ignored in the end, and you could say that Blair was already down before Chilcot was pulling him down.
I mean, it's great. Cartoonists, they conflate two ideas, don't they? They take two things, they put them into one.
Yeah.
And it's,
and who's this? Who did this one? Adam.
This is Christian Adams from the Daily Telegraph.
Oh, yeah. The Telegraph gives a lot of space to cartoons,
and they actually gives Christian a lot of freedom to attack everyone, surprisingly. Interestingly, Steve Spell's cartoon on the Chilcot Inquiry was refused publication. Did not appear in The Guardian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because it had Blair sitting... It's not in the book, because I chose that one. But it was one Blair sitting at a desk with the Chilcot Inquiry on the side and a revolver on the table. So the implication
being that... So they rejected it on grounds of taste?
Yes, it's always taste, yeah.
Always. Let's have a look at some of the others. This one is particularly brilliant.
Yes.
This is Michael Gove, thinking he's stabbing Boris Johnson in the back, but of course it goes right through and stabs
I mean, they're
himself.
all cartoons in essence are visual metaphors, are they not?
Yes.
And the best ones are those without any speech bubbles or captions. I mean, that says everything.
That's just absolutely brilliant. And of course, Johnson survived and Gove didn't. Johnson's now the Foreign Secretary for now, at the time of publication. A very good one. Who did this one?
This is Peter Brooks of The Times. He's probably our greatest living cartoonist.
You think so?
I think him and Steve are the two big guns of British cartooning.
Yeah, I'll grant you that. I'm just not a fan of The Times, so I don't see
sure.
it.
But Peter gives no quarter to the government, and you know, he gives the opposition as hard a time as he does the government. But he...
Now, what about a politician that's beyond caricature?
What, like Donald Trump, yes.
Yeah.
Beyond satire.
You've got one. This is Adams again. The right to bear arms is, of course, a big pro-gun man, or at least is now pretending to be
He's pretending to be a lot of things. Yeah.
He's blasting himself through the foot.
Yeah, visual metaphor.
Visual metaphor. But then again, he's marching on, isn't he?
He is.
And isn't that the point about Trump?
This is the point, yeah. Any other politician would have done...
He'd be dead by now. He shot himself so many times.
He got Sarah Palin to endorse him 6 months ago. That would be the end for everyone else. But for him, he can say anything and do anything. He can insult the disabled. He can just...
It's never gone out of fashion. You mentioned Lowe, who famously, as you say, portrayed the TUC, Trade Union Congress, for younger viewers as a cart horse,
which the unions didn't actually like.
And Ernie Bevan as horny-handed, powerful forearms, which of course he
got rid of George Lansbury.
He throttled them.
Jeremy Corbyn should be quite relieved that he's not around today,
somewhere else.
Obviously, the incident when he told Lansbury that you're too far left off the road.
So going right back now to, well, of course it goes back centuries, but there's in the 30s, Bevan, the TUC, Churchill in the 40s. It's not gone out of fashion, has it?
Only that newspaper circulations are declining because of technology. A lot of people get their news now on tablets, and it's not the same.
The cartoon translate to tablets.
Yeah, they don't. And the cartoon was king. If you think in Lowe's time in the 1930s, there was no television, radio was in its infancy. Everyone got their news through the newspaper. And the cartoonists were the celebrities of their day. Sidney Struby, who worked for the Daily Express, was on £10,000 a year in 1931.
Wow.
Now, if you think you could buy a house in London, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Way more. It's impossible because, you know, the spending power was much greater in those days.
That's fantastic.
But
so what will happen
they will
then?
make the celebrities.
I mean, I'm one who will celebrate when the last editor is strangled by the last copy of the Daily Express.
Yeah, sure.
What will happen when there are no more newspapers?
I don't know. It is, as we know, it's impossible to predict the future. And it's especially difficult to predict technology and the way it goes. I don't know. The thing is, online, when you look at it online, you have to search out the cartoon. Whereas in the newspaper, you just come across it naturally.
Yes.
Now, the whole thing about the newspaper cartoon, it was there to support the editorial line of the newspaper originally. And it was there to break up the huge amount of text.
Sure.
Because there was no photography.
Well, the good news is we've got your 4 books. And we've got your gallery in Putney, which I'm going to bring my family to see.
Look forward to seeing you.
Very, very soon. Thanks for joining us, Doctor.
No trouble.
And now it's your turn to tell us what you think through the portals of social media. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, Nicaragua celebrates 10 year of the Sandinista movement, or comeback really, of Daniel Ortega. And Adot Cabello says, great to see the return of a true socialist revolutionary giant to Latin American politics. Will he be allowed to succeed, though?
Well, of course, there is no path. The path is made by walking, and Ortega's been walking since the 1970s. And his great achievement is to come back from defeat.
And how? And then the best political cartoons. Simon Brian Anderson sent us the following picture.
It's very effective, actually. We'll see what the outcome is. We've got a special Sputnik on Wednesday from breakfast talking about the outcome of this epic battle for the presidency of the United States.
That's all the tweets that we have time for then.
Which, alas, means that's the end of the show.
You can stay in touch with us on social media, Twitter, RT_Sputnik, or Facebook, Sputnik on Russia Today. It's goodbye from me, Gayatri.
And from me, George Galloway. It's been marvellous.